Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today you are about to hear one of those unbelievable stories that sounds like pure fantasy until you realize how often history hides treasure in plain sight, because sitting quietly in pockets, drawers, old jars, and inherited collections could be a tiny copper coin or a silver-toned quarter that on the surface looks ordinary but underneath carries a story so explosive it has collectors, historians, and treasure hunters losing sleep. And if you have ever wondered how a simple 1-cent coin or a single $quarter could be worth more than mansions, yachts, and entire businesses combined, you are exactly where you need to be. Because in this deep dive we are uncovering the legendary 1967 USA 1-cent coin rumored to hold a face value reaching an astonishing $241 million, along with the mysterious and controversial 1973 $quarter coin said to command up to $49 million due to rare errors, minting mistakes, and once-in-a lifetime possibilities that transformed pocket change into historic fortune. And as we begin, let this sink in for a moment. The idea that something created to be spent without a second thought could one day rewrite financial destiny is not just thrilling, it is a powerful reminder that history often whispers before it screams, and the 1967 1-cent coin is one of those whispers that echoes across decades. Because 1967 was a year unlike most in American coinage history, a period defined by change, tension, experimentation, and subtle decisions that later exploded into legendary myths and documented anomalies. And to understand why a 1-cent coin from this year could reach such an unimaginable valuation, you must understand the environment it was born into. During the mid-1960s, the United States Mint was under immense pressure. Rising metal prices, coin shortages, public hoarding, and economic uncertainty forced rapid production, shortcuts, and unusual minting practices. And during this era, mint marks were temporarily removed to discourage collecting, which already makes coins from this period distinct, but it also created confusion, misalignment, and opportunities for errors to slip through unnoticed. And the 1967 1-cent coin, bearing the familiar Lincoln design, was struck in massive numbers. Yet within those millions lie theoretical and rumored specimens that defy all logic, coins struck on the wrong planchets, coins with dramatic double dies so strong they appear almost sculpted, coins with off-metal compositions that suggest experimental or transitional alloys never meant for public release, and coins that show extreme die deterioration mixed with sharp detail in impossible combinations. And one of the most talked about possibilities is the existence of a 1967 1-cent struck on a silver or transitional alloy planchet, something that should not exist officially, yet history shows us again and again that the mint has accidentally struck coins on leftover blanks from previous years or experimental runs, and if such a coin exists confirmed and authenticated, it would instantly become one of the most valuable coins in history due to its impossible nature. Because rarity alone does not create value, impossibility does, and collectors are not just paying for metal, they are paying for proof that something happened which should never have happened. And this is where the legend of the $241 million valuation begins to form, because when you combine a historically turbulent minting year, massive production pressure, removed mint marks, and known experimental metallurgy from surrounding years, you create a perfect storm for a one-of-a-kind error. And stories have circulated for decades about a privately held 1967 cent showing a composition match to silver-based alloys with microscopic conformation, yet never publicly auctioned, never displayed, fueling speculation, mystery, and astronomical valuation estimates. Because the moment such a coin appears in a major auction house, the bidding would not be driven by collectors alone. Museums, private investors, and institutions would enter the battlefield, each understanding that owning such a coin is owning a piece of untold history. And beyond metal errors, there are rumors of extreme double die obverse varieties on 1967 cents so dramatic that Lincoln's features appear duplicated, with date numerals showing heavy separation visible to the naked eye, something that again should have been caught yet somehow escaped. And while minor double dies exist, The speculation centers on a never-released master die error, something so severe that only a handful of coins could have been struck before detection, and if even one example survived it would instantly become legendary. And then there is the realm of wrong denomination strikes. The idea that a 1-cent design could be struck on a planchet intended for a higher denomination or even a foreign coin blank. During the chaotic mint operations of the time, creating a weight and size mismatch that would rewrite classification books, and when collectors talk about $241 million, they are not saying every 1967 penny is worth that. They are saying that one impossible survivor, one verified anomaly, could reach that level because it would stand alone in history. And this is what makes coin collecting so electrifying. The hunt is not about odds, it is about possibility, and possibility does not expire. And just as the 1-cent coin of 1967 holds whispers of unimaginable wealth, the 1973 $quarter coin carries its own storm of controversy, error, and mystery, because quarters are among the most heavily used coins in circulation, making pristine survivors rare, but also making unnoticed errors more likely to travel unnoticed for years. And 1973 was another complex year for the mint, marked by changes in equipment, increased automation, and ongoing challenges with die alignment, planchet preparation, and quality control, and within that environment several types of errors could transform a simple quarter into a multi-million-dollar artifact, including off-center strikes so dramatic that portions of the design are missing yet the date remains visible, creating the perfect balance between error severity and identifiability, because a coin without a date loses value, but a coin with a clear date and massive error skyrockets. And then there are double-struck quarters where the coin was struck once, shifted, and struck again, creating overlapping designs that tell a story of mechanical failure frozen in time. And some 1973 quarters are rumored to display such extreme double strikes that Washington's profile appears almost ghost-like layered upon itself. And beyond striking errors there are wrong planchet errors, quarters struck on planchets intended for dimes, foreign coins, or experimental blanks, resulting in coins that are underweight, oversized, or composed of unexpected metals. And these are not just curiosities, they are documented realities across mint history. And when such an error aligns with a specific year like 1973, it becomes a target for collectors hunting completion of error-type sets. And one of the most fascinating theories surrounding the $49 million valuation is the possibility of a 1973 quarter struck on a silver planchet after silver was officially removed from quarters years earlier, something that again should not exist, yet. Accidental strikes of outdated planchets have occurred in other denominations, and if a 1973 silver quarter were confirmed it would instantly become a crown jewel of American numismatics. And then there are die varieties, subtle at first glance but devastating in value when magnified, including double dies on the reverse where lettering and eagle details show separation, repunched mint marks where remnants of previous impressions remain visible, and die cracks so severe they form raised lines, resembling additional design elements. And while minor die cracks are common, extreme examples where cracks connect major design features are rare and highly sought after, and in some rumored specimens of 1973 quarters these cracks form dramatic patterns that almost look intentional, yet are pure accident, and collectors love accidents because they are unrepeatable. And the valuation climbs not only with rarity but with narrative, because each error tells a story about the moment it was created. A brief second where machinery failed, alignment slipped, or quality control blinked, and that second became immortalized in metal. And when you combine multiple errors on a single coin, the value multiplies exponentially, because multi-error coins are the unicorns of numismatics. And this is where the speculation of $49 million finds its footing. Not in ordinary errors but in a hypothetical perfect storm specimen, a 1973 quarter with a wrong planchet. Next. 1990 p $quarter today, because you are about to hear a story that turns everyday pocket change into the stuff of legends, A story that begins with a simple welcome and an invitation to imagine that the ordinary quarter you may have flipped into a vending machine or dropped into a drawer could secretly be one of the most valuable modern coins ever whispered about. And today we are diving deep into the fascinating and mysterious tale of the 1990p quarter-dollar coin that has captured imaginations with claims of a staggering $34 million value due to a rare combination of minting errors, production mistakes, historical circumstances, collector psychology, and the almost mythic possibilities that arise when rarity, demand, and error collide in the world of numismatics. Because the 1990p quarter on the surface appears to be just another Washington quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a year when millions upon millions of coins were produced for everyday commerce, yet beneath that ordinary appearance lies a universe of potential anomalies that collectors obsess over, beginning with the context of the year itself when the United States Mint was navigating changes in technology, die preparation, quality control, and production speed as it tried to meet demand, and whenever mints increase output, the probability of mistakes increases as well, creating the perfect environment for errors that might slip through unnoticed. And the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on quarters until later years, produced a massive number of 1,990 quarters, but within that ocean of coins there exists the tantalizing possibility that a microscopic fraction were struck with extraordinary defects that transform them from 25-cent pieces into objects of immense value. And the first major category of error often discussed in connection with the most valuable 1990p quarter examples is the concept of wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or even another metal composition entirely, and if a 1990 Washington quarter were struck on a silver planchet, a foreign planchet, or a planchet of incorrect thickness or alloy, the resulting coin would immediately stand out to experts through differences in weight, color, sound, and edge characteristics. And such wrong planchet errors are among the most prized in the hobby because they represent a fundamental breakdown in the minting process, and when combined with pristine condition and strong eye appeal, they can command astronomical prices, especially if they are unique or nearly unique, and this is where the $34 million narrative begins to take shape, because the theoretical existence of a 1990p quarter struck on an experimental or transitional planchet, possibly tied to testing phases or leftover materials from earlier compositions, would represent a once-in-a-generation discovery, and collectors are known to pay staggering sums for coins that rewrite what is believed possible for a given year and denomination. Then there is the realm of double die errors, particularly double die obverse or reverse varieties, where the design elements such as the lettering, date, or Washington's profile appear double due to misalignment during the die creation process. And while minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed as mechanical doubling, true hub doubling is far rarer and far more valuable, and if a 1990p quarter exhibited strong, dramatic doubling visible to the naked eye across multiple design elements, especially the date and the words Liberty or I in God We Trust, it would instantly become one of the most important modern error coins ever discovered, and the value would skyrocket not just because of the error itself but because of the narrative it creates, the story that collectors can tell about a modern coin defying expectations and rivaling the legendary double die cents of the mid-20th century. Then there are off-metal strikes and multi-strike errors where a coin is struck more than once, sometimes partially outside the collar, resulting in dramatic distortions of the design, elongated shapes, overlapping impressions, or even missing sections. And while many off-center strikes are modestly valuable, an extreme multi-strike error combined with off-center alignment, especially if the date remains visible and the coin remains uncirculated, can reach breathtaking values. And when you layer this with the idea that the coin could have been struck, ejected incorrectly, and then struck again on another planchet or die, the uniqueness factor becomes enormous, and uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in numismatics because collectors compete fiercely for items that no one else can own. And competition drives prices into territory that seems unbelievable to outsiders, another major factor in the lore of the $34,001,990 P quarter is the possibility of a mule error, where the obverse die from one coin is paired with a reverse die from a different denomination or even a different series altogether, and genuine mule errors are among the rarest and most famous mint mistakes, often discovered years after the fact and instantly becoming headline news within the collecting community. And if a 1990 Washington quarter obverse were paired with a reverse not intended for it, such as a different year design or an experimental reverse, the resulting coin would be a numismatic sensation, and the value would reflect not only its rarity but its role as a documented failure of mint controls, something that institutions and private collectors alike would want to study and possess. Then there is the subtle but incredibly important issue of die varieties and hub changes, because the late 1980s and early 1990s were a period of transition in die preparation techniques, and small changes in the master hubs could result in barely detectable but highly significant differences in the final coins, and advanced collectors spend countless hours examining mint state examples under magnification to identify variations in spacing, font shapes, and relief that distinguish one variety from another. And if a previously unknown major variety were identified in the 1990 P quarter series, especially one tied to a short production run or experimental die, the discovery would send shockwaves through the hobby, and values would climb rapidly as collectors raced to secure examples before prices stabilized. Another layer of intrigue comes from strike quality and condition rarity, because while millions of 1990 quarters were struck, relatively few survive in perfect or near perfect condition, and the higher the grade, the more exponential the increase in value becomes. And when you combine an extraordinary error with a top population grade, you create the kind of coin that auction houses dream of, because wealthy collectors are willing to pay almost any price for the finest known example of a legendary error. And this is where the $34 million figure becomes conceivable, not as a typical market value but as the result of a bidding war between elite collectors, museums, or investment funds seeking to own a trophy coin that symbolizes both rarity and prestige. And beyond physical errors, there is also the realm of metallurgical anomalies, where the alloy composition deviates from the standard due to contamination or experimental mixtures, and modern testing techniques such as XRF analysis can reveal subtle differences that were impossible to detect decades ago. And if a 1990 P quarter were found to contain an unusual blend of metals or trace elements linked to a limited test run or production anomaly, it would add another layer of uniqueness and historical significance. Then there is the psychological and cultural aspect of coin collecting that cannot be ignored, because value is not determined solely by metal and error but by story, belief, and desire, and stories of ultra-valuable modern coins capture the imagination of the public in a way that older rarities sometimes do not, because they suggest that treasure could still be hiding in plain sight, and this idea fuels searching, speculation, and demand, which in turn reinforces high valuations. And the 1990 P quarter fits perfectly into this narrative because it is modern enough to be relatable yet old enough to have accumulated mystery and myth. Next, 1978 D quarter dollar today, where ordinary pocket change turns into extraordinary treasure stories and where history, mystery, and money collide. Because in this video we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and controversial modern coin legends of all time, the 1978 D quarter dollar, a coin that most people have spent without a second thought but which some collectors believe could be worth as much as $24 million due to a rare combination of minting errors, production mistakes, unusual circumstances, and once-in-a-lifetime possibilities that transformed a common clad quarter into a numismatic phenomenon. So settle in and stay with us, because what you are about to hear might make you look twice at every quarter you touch from now on. And to understand why the 1978 D quarter has captured the imagination of collectors worldwide, we need to travel back to the late 1970s when the United States Mint was under immense pressure to produce massive Quantities of coins for a growing economy, vending machines, parking meters, and everyday commerce were consuming coins at an unprecedented rate, and the Denver Mint in particular was running at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters using high-speed presses, worn dies, hurried quality control, and experimental processes that were not always perfectly executed. And it is in this environment that the seeds of legendary errors were planted, because when speed overtakes precision, tiny mistakes can slip through, and sometimes those mistakes combine in ways that create something truly extraordinary. The 1978 Quater was struck as part of the Washington Quater series using a copper-nickel clad composition with an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded to a pure copper core, weighing approximately 5.67 grams with a reeded edge. But while the standard specifications are well documented, what makes certain examples of this coin extraordinary are deviations so extreme and so rare that they push the boundaries of what collectors thought possible for a circulating quarter. One of the most talked about errors associated with the 1978 Quater is the dramatic off-metal strike possibility, a scenario where a quarter design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a foreign coin blank. And while minor off-metal strikes are known in other years, the belief among some experts is that at least one 1978 Quater may have been struck on an experimental or transitional planchet that was never meant for public release, possibly a planchet intended for a different alloy composition or thickness, which would explain weight anomalies far outside normal tolerance ranges. And when a coin like that survives in pristine condition and can be authenticated, it becomes a once-in-a-generation discovery. Another major error category fueling the massive valuation claims is the alleged multiple strike and misaligned die combination, where the coin was struck more than once without being ejected properly from the press, resulting in overlapping impressions, distorted lettering, ghost images of Washington's profile, and a doubled or even tripled rim that looks more like modern art than currency. Such errors can be dramatic on their own, but when combined with a severe misalignment where the obverse and reverse are not centered correctly, the visual impact becomes stunning. Collectors pay premiums for eye appeal and shock factor, and these extreme error coins deliver both in abundance. Then there is the possibility of a wrong die pairing, which is one of the most exciting and controversial aspects of the 1978 Quater legend. Wrong die pairings occur when an obverse die intended for one coin is accidentally paired with a reverse die intended for another. And while this is incredibly rare for quarters, some believe that during late-night production runs or die changeovers a mismatched die could have been installed briefly before being noticed, creating a small number of coins with unique and undocumented design combinations. And if such a coin were to surface with clear evidence and proper certification, it would instantly become one of the most important modern U.S. error coins ever discovered, pushing its value into uncharted territory. Another factor that adds fuel to the $24 million valuation claim is the idea of a mule error. A mule coin is struck with two dies that were never meant to be used together, such as a quarter obverse paired with a completely unrelated reverse. And while famous mule errors like the Sacagawea dollar mule have sold for enormous sums, the possibility of an undiscovered 1978 Quater mule continues to captivate collectors, because if even a single authentic example exists, it would rewrite the history books and become a centerpiece of any major museum or private collection. Metallurgical anomalies also play a significant role in the story. During the late 1970s, the Mint experimented with different bonding techniques and alloy sourcing, and there are theories that a small number of planchets may have been improperly bonded, resulting in split layers, exposed copper cores, missing clad layers, or uneven metal distribution. Coins exhibiting full layer separation with intact design details are extremely rare and highly prized. And if such an error occurred alongside other major striking errors, it would exponentially increase the coin's desirability and value. Condition is another critical piece of the puzzle. Error coins are often found in circulated condition because their unusual appearance leads them to be spent rather than saved. But if a 1978 Quater with extreme errors somehow escaped circulation and remained in mint state condition with sharp details, original luster, and minimal handling marks it would be nearly priceless. Collectors place enormous emphasis on preservation and eye appeal, and the combination of dramatic errors with top-grade condition is what drives record-breaking auction prices. Provenance and mystery further enhance the coin's allure. Stories circulate of coins discovered in old bank rolls, estate collections, or forgotten safety deposit boxes, adding a layer of intrigue that captures public imagination. And when a coin has an unusual backstory, it becomes more than metal, it becomes a narrative, a tangible link to a moment in time when something went wrong at the mint in a way that created something extraordinary. The market dynamics of ultra-rare error coins also contribute to the massive valuation estimates. Unlike regular coins whose values are guided by population reports and auction histories, unique or nearly unique error coins exist in a realm where price is determined by what a single wealthy collector is willing to pay. When two or more elite collectors compete for the same once-in-a-lifetime piece, prices can skyrocket into the millions, especially when the coin fills a missing gap in a world-class collection. The psychological factor cannot be underestimated. Owning the most famous 1978 Quater in existence would grant prestige, bragging rights, and a permanent place in numismatic history, which for some collectors is worth far more than the monetary cost. Skepticism naturally surrounds claims of a $24 million quarter, and it is important to acknowledge that such valuations represent the upper extreme based on hypothetical perfect storm scenarios where multiple ultra-rare errors converge in a single coin, and that coin is authenticated, graded, and presented to the market at the right time. However, history has shown that the numismatic world is full of surprises. Coins once dismissed as impossible have surfaced decades later and shattered previous assumptions. And as long as minting errors exist and undiscovered coins remain hidden in collections and hoards, the possibility remains alive, which is why the 1978 Quater continues to inspire treasure hunters to search their change and collectors to examine every detail under magnification. Even normal-looking 1978 Quarters can hold value if they display minor double dies, repunched mint marks, die cracks, cuds, or other anomalies that increase collectability and serve as stepping stones toward understanding more dramatic errors. Education plays a key role in this pursuit. Learning how to identify genuine mint errors versus post-mint damage is essential, as is working with reputable grading services that can authenticate and encapsulate coins, because without proper verification, even the most spectacular-looking piece will struggle to achieve recognition and value. The legend of the 1978 Quater worth $24 million ultimately represents the magic of coin collecting itself. The idea that something ordinary can become extraordinary through a combination of history. Today we're diving into a story that sounds almost unbelievable at first glance but has captivated coin collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people alike, because we're talking about an ordinary-looking pocket change coin that may have passed through countless hands without anyone realizing its true potential, the 1996 Quater dollar. A coin that on the surface seems no different from any other Washington quarter minted in the mid-1990s, yet according to rumors, collector legends, and deep dives into minting anomalies, certain rare examples of this coin are believed to be worth as much as $9 million. And in this video we're going to explore why that claim exists, what kinds of errors and mistakes could possibly elevate a 25-cent piece into the multi-million-dollar range, how such errors occur in the first place, what collectors look for, and why the possibility still exists that one of these ultra-valuable examples could be sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or even your own wallet right now. So settle in, stay curious, and let's uncover the fascinating mystery behind the 1996 Quater dollar and how minting imperfections, historical context, and collector psychology combine to create one of the most intriguing coin value stories of modern American numismatics. Because to truly understand how a quarter can be worth $9 million, we first need to step back and look at what the 1996 Quater actually is. This coin was minted in Denver, indicated by the small d mint mark located to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse, and it was part of the regular Washington Quarter series that had been in circulation since 1932, long before the introduction of the state quarters program that would begin in 1999, meaning the 1996 D quarter represents the final years of the classic Washington Quarter design before a major change in American coinage captured the public's attention. Millions upon millions of quarters were struck in Denver that year, making the date itself very common in normal circulated condition, and under ordinary circumstances a typical 1996 D quarter is only worth face value or perhaps a slight premium in uncirculated condition. So how does such a common coin become linked to a $9 million valuation? The answer lies entirely in errors, mistakes, and extreme anomalies that occur during the minting process, errors that are so rare, so dramatic, and so historically significant that they transform a mass-produced object into a unique artifact. And to appreciate that transformation, it's important to understand how coins are made and how things can go wrong at each stage, because every error tells a story of a machine, a human oversight, or a chain of unusual circumstances converging at just the right moment. At the U.S. Mint, coins are produced through a highly controlled industrial process that involves blanking, annealing, upsetting, striking, and inspection. Metal strips are first fed into blanking presses that punch out round discs known as planchets. These planchets are then softened in an annealing furnace, cleaned, and run through an upsetting mill that raises a slight rim around the edge. After that, they are fed into high-speed coining presses where they are struck between two dies under enormous pressure, impressing the design into the metal, and finally the coins are inspected, counted, and shipped for circulation. But despite strict quality controls, errors can and do occur, especially when millions of coins are produced at high speed, and while most errors are caught and destroyed, a small number escape into circulation, and when those errors are minor, they may add only a modest premium, but when they are major, unprecedented, or involve combinations of mistakes that should never happen together, that's when values can skyrocket into the realm of the extraordinary. One of the most discussed possibilities behind the legendary value of a 1996 D quarter involves the concept of a wrong planchet error, which is one of the most dramatic and sought-after errors in all of numismatics. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a metal disc intended for a different denomination or even a different coin altogether. For example, a quarter struck on a planchet meant for a dime, a nickel, or even a foreign coin. Such errors are rare because planchets for different denominations are usually processed in separate areas and are carefully controlled by weight and size, but history has shown that mistakes do happen, and when a quarter is struck on the wrong planchet, the resulting coin may be underweight, oversized, or composed of an unusual metal, immediately signaling that something is wrong. In the case of the 1996 D quarter, rumors persist of examples struck on experimental or transitional planchets, possibly intended for special mint projects or foreign contracts, which if proven would place such a coin among the rarest of modern U.S. Mint errors. And when you combine that rarity with strong collector demand and the mystique of a late pre-state quarters era anomaly, values can climb into the millions, especially if the coin is unique or one of only a handful known. Another possibility often discussed is a double strike or multiple strike error combined with misalignment. While double struck coins are not unheard of, most are relatively minor, showing a slight offset or secondary impression, but in extremely rare cases a coin can be struck multiple times with dramatic rotation, offset, or even with the coin flipping between strikes, producing a chaotic and visually stunning result. Imagine a 1996 D quarter where Washington's portrait appears twice, partially overlapping, with parts of the reverse design intruding onto the obverse, and the rim distorted into an irregular shape. Such coins are already valuable when they exist, but if such a piece were also struck off-center or on the wrong planchet, the combination of errors would be almost unheard of, and in the world of elite collectors, combinations are everything, because each additional layer of improbability multiplies the coin's desirability and value. Then there is the fascinating category of die errors, which involve problems with the dies themselves rather than the planchet. Dies are the engraved steel tools that impart the design onto the coin, and over time they wear, crack, chip, or even break. Most die cracks are small and produce thin raised lines on the coin, but sometimes a die can shatter dramatically, producing what is known as a retained cud or a full cud, where a chunk of the die breaks away and leaves a large raised blob of metal on the coin, obscuring part of the design. Now imagine a 1996 Quater struck with a massive retained cud that dramatically alters Washington's portrait or the eagle on the reverse, creating a one-of-a-kind appearance, and then imagine that die being used for only a few strikes before being pulled from service, resulting in an extremely limited number of examples. Such coins already command high prices, but if the die error is unprecedented in size or location, and if the coin remains in pristine condition, the value can escalate rapidly, especially if it becomes famous within the collecting community. Fame itself plays a powerful role in numismatics, and that brings us to another important factor behind the rumored $9 million value: provenance and story. A coin is not valued solely on metal and error, but also on its documented history: who discovered it, how it was authenticated, where it was published, and how it was perceived by experts. If a 1996 Quater with an extraordinary error were discovered and then certified by a major grading service as unique or among the finest known, and then featured in numismatic journals, auction catalogs, and media stories, its value would be amplified far beyond what the error alone might suggest. Collectors are not just buying a coin, they are buying a piece of history, a conversation starter, a legend they can own. And when two or more wealthy collectors compete for the same legendary piece, prices can reach staggering levels. Another error category often linked to extreme values is the off-metal or missing layer error. Modern quarters are clad coins composed of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of copper-nickel alloy. Sometimes during the bonding process, one of these layers can fail to adhere properly, resulting in a coin that is missing its outer layer on one side, exposing the copper core, or in rarer cases, missing both outer layers, producing a thin copper disc. Such errors are visually striking and immediately identifiable, and while many examples exist for various dates, a perfectly preserved 1996 Quater with a dramatic missing clad layer error, especially if combined with other anomalies like weak strikes or misalignment, could command enormous attention.